What if the very thing you're avoiding could be the key to saving your life or someone else's? Welcome to Seizing Your Greatness. I'm Julianne Meyer, and today we're going to be diving into the kind of conversation that could literally change the course of your future. My guest is Daniel Kilburn, founder of Emergency Action Planning and widely recognized as America's Save Your Life coach. With decades of military experience and a mission driven approach to family readiness, Daniel teaches practical, no fluff strategies to prepare for life's most unpredictable moments. And he's here to help us shift from panic to purpose and from fear to powerful preparedness. Daniel, I'm so glad to have you on the show. Welcome to Seizing Your Greatness.
Well, thank you very much, Julianne. I'm grateful for being here, and thank you for having me.
I'm excited. When you and I met, we hit on this other level of connection and I'm so happy to have you here today. And one of the things, I mentioned a little bit about who you are and what you do, but what's something that people can't find about you on the internet? What's something that maybe a fact that people don't know or just something that you'd love to share?
Well, I'm actually a pretty good cook. I do a soup of the month. I create a soup. Now, I find the recipes. It's not like I invent them. I go track down interesting recipes and I work on them. And of course, they get a little personality changes in them. But I make one every month. My last one was the beef rib French onion soup. Very hearty, very tasty. Next one is
Oh,
going to be a creamy lasagna soup.
ooh, that sounds so good. It's like an entire meal. There's something for me about soups that just warm my soul. I don't care if it's summer, I don't care if it's winter, just something about it. I love that. That's a really cool fact. I love that so much.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
a mutual friend introduced us, and so I know that you are also an author and you've done so many different things, but of all the many hats that you wear, what do you think is the through line that connects all of them?
Well, the one that I think would be the through line, excuse me, are my children.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, I would like to sit here and say everything I do for them, but that might not be quite exactly right. However, when I started my process of disaster management planning, it was because of them. So I
Mm.
could protect them from the coming events that were going to come into their lives.
So, you've taken a subject that is it's the thing that people don't want to look at.
You
So,
had a point there.
you're like, "Oh, no." It involves things that people just definitely don't wanna take a look at because I feel like sometimes people think if they do, it will somehow bring it on, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with being prepared, but what is something that you notice with people and their resistance towards being prepared for things that maybe they don't wanna look at?
Well, I've had conversations with people. Every year I do a holiday house fire prevention training for free. Don't burn your house down because there's more house fires during the winter months. It's
Yeah.
that simple. And I've had people actually say, well, I can't do this with my children. I says, why not? Because I might upset them. Okay, so if the house burns down, they're not going to be upset, right, Mom? Or if they don't know how to get out of the house and someone gets injured, they're not going to be upset. Come on. So that a lot of it has to do around fear of being looked at wrong because you're actually being prepared, or fear of upsetting somebody because you're actually having a hard conversation. Like you said, very few people want to talk about it.
Yeah, very few people do, but I used to work in addiction recovery. I don't know if I mentioned that to you before. The audience definitely knows that. But one of the things is you prepare while everything's okay, so that when you are not in a good place, you sort of do things automatically. Because when you are in stress and trauma, things have to be automatic because your brain's not going to sit there and go, okay, what can I do next and make the best choice ever.
Well, you're absolutely right. And a lot of that comes back from my military career and martial arts training, is where you develop muscle memory, because when the compost hits the fan, you don't have time to sit and ponder what you need to do. You need to follow back on your training. And that's what
Mhm.
happens with people who don't prepare for emergencies and disasters. They fall back on their training, which is none. And they become panicked. They become actually more of a hazard to themselves and the community than anything else.
That makes a lot of sense to me too. You bring up a really good point, and I think that maybe when people who are watching are thinking about this, is you're being more of a hazard, not only to yourself but whoever is around you. Is that really how you want to show up? I mean, is it more beneficial to have an uncomfortable conversation or actually cause damage in the moment?
Well, a lot of it depends on how you use it. When I first started integrating my family into disaster management planning, I did it out of the love of my heart.
Mhm.
And my children totally understood that then. It wasn't like, no one's afraid, no one's scared. Yeah, Dad, we got it. We're going to be doing something here to protect us because here's the way I look at it. I have more days behind me than I have in front of me. And the day will come when my children will definitely, I mean, they're all adults now. It's not like they're kids, but the days come when this world is theirs and they're going to have to take it in their hands and have the tools they can use to navigate the world. So that's one of the biggest things or reasons I do what I do is so your children will have the tools they need to navigate the emergencies and disasters when you are not there to help them.
I love that. It's kind of like having a will or a living will even. And I think too a lot of people don't think about things like that nature either, because I know my mom, who actually passed away without a current will or anything of that nature, and it was like her philosophy that somehow by being prepared for this inevitable thing that she was causing it to happen quicker. And I just love the idea of having a plan so that you know what to do, or at least you have, like you said, the training to fall back on.
Mhm.
So, is this like an involved process? Is there things that people can do that just sort of make it a little bit easier? What would you recommend as a first step?
Well, to looking at natural disaster, it does not matter if it's an earthquake, a hurricane, a wildfire, a tornado, or what have you. You're going to need four basic things. You're going to need shelter, food, water, and sanitation. And when I say sanitation, I'm not talking about washing your hands and face. You're going to have to go poo and pee at some point.
Yeah.
It does not matter where in the world you are, what the disaster is. Those are four things you're going to need, period. So I recommend starting with those, getting a plan together for how you're going to be sheltered, food, water, and sanitation. And then you can open up the range there for whatever your niche disaster might be or whatever your myopic focus is, and then expand out from there into whatever needs to be done to work on issues for that.
It's interesting to me too, because I live in California and we had a major earthquake yesterday, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did was sit at my desk and go, "We're having an earthquake." And that's all I did. And then my dog starts barking, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I should probably, get under something."
Well, it's funny. It was the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989, on day three of the World Series, that got me into this whole thing. I was living in Monterey, California at the time, and somebody reached down. I was at work, I was a cook, and
Mhm.
someone reached down and picked up the building and bounced it off the ground about five or six times. And the tray of halibut went flying in the air. I went flying in the air, and next thing I know, I'm looking down the floor at all the other people laying on the floor. I'm thinking, what is this? Is this an earthquake? Yeah, it probably is. Same thing. I better get under something.
Well, it's just funny how it's not exactly my first earthquake, and yet I mean, it's kind of fortuitous that we're having this conversation now because it wasn't that serious.
Mhm.
And it really just reminded me of how my mind went completely blank. And what if it was? What if it was something major? Do I have extra water? Not enough. Do I have, all the things that we might need in order to, I mean, assuming that I could get to it, but like all these different things that at least I could be more prepared just in case I need it. And what does it hurt to do that and actually practice?
It doesn't hurt to do any of it. We're talking about earlier about barriers to doing this. One barrier I talk to people about is, with all that food going to spoil. But no, no, here's how you do it. You buy food you eat already. You
Hmm.
build it into your menu plan. So therefore, you've always got fresh, non-perishable food, being
Hmm.
the soups, the crackers, the cereals, whatever. And I used to build what I called my mini mart. So when I was done in the kitchen, I'd take it out of my mini mart, put it back in the kitchen. I'd go to my notebook at the mini mart and say, this is what I got to go. So after the initial cost, it's not expensive to keep it up. And you always have a larder, so to speak, to fall back on.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, because I mean, it's so silly, but these are the things we worry about. And I think about how much food I've thrown out just because I didn't use it. It was in my refrigerator and I bought
Yeah.
it fresh and I still didn't use it. And yet I am afraid to have a backup because I might not use it.
Well, I understand what you mean. I'm just as guilty as most people are, especially with the fruits and vegetables and stuff. If we're not on top of them, yeah, they're going to spoil. But the idea when you're building a food plan, you're working with what we would call non-perishable foods that have a longer shelf life. So you don't have to really worry about them spoiling unless you
Yeah.
decide to throw it in the trunk of your car for 5 years, and then that can be bad.
Exactly. I just think it's funny though, the excuses that we come up with in order to just not do or not look at the thing we don't want to look at. It's kind of entertaining to me. So, you mentioned your kids and how that's a driving factor in a lot of the things that you do. And I think it is for most people. We want to keep them safe and we want them to live better than we did. We want them to be successful long past when we're gone, all of these things. And, I think it's kind of funny. Do you think it's easier for parents to talk to kids or for kids to talk to parents about this kind of preparedness?
Well, it goes both ways sometimes because I've had my children talk to me about it based on instances and circumstances that happened immediately to them.
Hmm.
And as the parent, it's up to us to forewarn them, so to speak, and prepare them. And it can be done quite simply. Like I said, if you're coming from love and everything, you involve them in the process, you get them to help in the building of it, and they're actually
Hmm.
building it themselves with you. And
Yeah.
they're probably giving you some information. I know it's possible. We don't know what they know, but I guarantee you our kids know something we don't. It could be something very helpful.
That's true. I'm thinking about grade school, back in grade school, and
Hmm.
how we used to have to do fire drills and we had to
Okay.
do like bomb drills and things of that nature. So, it was just part of our existence. It didn't seem scary because it was just part of what we did. And I think too, if we can add this sort of thing in, it's just part of what we do and how we're being, then it doesn't have to be uncomfortable.
No, you're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable. Not only does it not have to be uncomfortable, but here's the thing to keep in mind. Once you build your plan, you need to adjust it regularly because
Mm,
things change. People
yeah.
come and go in the family, you move, cats, dogs, goldfish, what have you, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to upgrade it regularly. And then that's also a part of the way to bring the family together and a combined, the disasters are combined enemies. So we're going to fight it together. We're going to be the heroes.
I like that. Now, I know that you've written a couple of different books. Actually, you're more prolific than this, but I wanted to pop up these two in particular because, you know, I it kind of really speaks to your knowledge. And what inspired you for each of these books?
Well, the first one, the Family Urban Disaster Planning, was the very first book I did. And I was going through a transformational leadership course at the time. It was like a 6 month course. And we had to pick a project. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to print a book. I'm going to publish a book, dang it. And so I literally went through my blog posts and I had all the material I needed. And I just created a small, you can read this book in an hour. And it covers the four things I just talked about, the basics, so that's how that one came about. And then the other book, Commanding Your Future, came from my veteran experience with a lot of veterans who are sort of up against the wall in the transition from military service to civilian
Mhm.
world, because they're totally two different animals. I got news for you. As a senior infantry drill sergeant, if I tried to talk to some civilians the way I would talk to an average soldier, it would definitely chap their hide. But that's okay. So that book is actually just 18, I think there's 18 chapters in it, just little vignettes of mind techniques you can use, tools and techniques and training to integrate yourself into the civilian world while embracing your military background and using that as a benefit to the
Yeah.
civilian sector.
I love that so much because it is a part of who you are. It's been a part of you. It's been your life. And also, why how do you let go of all that train? You can't let go of everything, but you also, like you said, have to integrate back into society and with people that have zero understanding of what you've been through and think maybe that they do. They have an opinion, but they don't really understand what it was like. And I love that you're doing that for people. I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of veterans, and I definitely want people to take a look and get that book because it's a tough road. Is that something that you spoke from experience and that's kind of like what you saw
Well,
you wished you had, or
a little of experience and a little of looking around me, watching,
Mhm.
talking to other veterans and the barriers that they were going through. And I said, well, let's see if we can do something to help these young men and women. Now, the interesting thing about the book, even though it's primarily focused on helping veterans integrate back into the civilian market, it's
Mhm.
actually for anybody. You can be an 18, 19, 20-year-old going into the civilian market. The tools in there will still work for you.
That's a really good point. I love that because you're writing it from the frame of mind of helping a particular group of people. It's kind of like when I say this is for the ladies and then the men pay attention. It might be intended for the veterans, but that doesn't mean that there's not value for everyone. So I'm glad you mentioned that because maybe people are like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. But, skills are skills. And
Absolutely. There's a lot of communication skills, leadership skills in there. Integration skills is a lot of it is the mindset. That's the best way to think about it. Is
yeah.
most of the stuff I talk about in that book is how you can train your mind, so to speak, in a particular way, or use your skills in a particular way to benefit yourself. And after all,
Mhm.
each and every one of you out there are the most important people in your world. So why not benefit yourself? It's a very good thing to do for yourself, and that helps
Exactly.
everyone around you.
Well, yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you have to put, as I say, put on the oxygen mask first and then help other people. I just want to point out, too, for those that are watching, that I've popped up your QR code and that reaches every way that people can get a hold of you. And then, of course, your website as well. But I just want to make sure that those who are like, what does that lead to, have an idea.
Well, I call it my internet stalking QR code. You can find me in all sorts of places with that QR code.
Yeah, it's funny that you would say that because I actually, whenever I used to cold email people, I would say, because you got to start somewhere. And so I'd say, I've been stalking you on the internet. Don't worry, I'm not outside your window. But same idea. So I love that so much. I'm just curious too. Do you have any success stories or like, people have come back and said, you know what, thank you for this because, and then, they'll tell you something that what you've shared with them has helped.
Well, I have several. I'm retired from the Army now, so what I'm going to mention is no longer happening. Well, you never know, it might sometime. But many times traveling around different military posts or different parts of the country, I've had a young man or young woman who I'm clueless about walk up to me, Sergeant Kilburn. I'm going, yeah, that's me. Okay. Do you remember me? I said, no, well, I was such and such. But what's great about that, they remembered me. So at some point, I must have done something valuable for them. And I pass this on to each and every one of you because each and every one of you have something of value that you can do for other people. So that's one thing. Another thing is I just got a phone call a couple of days ago. A couple of nonprofits, NGOs out of Florida want me to come and discuss hurricane preparedness with them because hurricane season is starting. And this is based on some work I've already done in Florida with other NGOs and people I know. So there's that good thing there. Those are a couple of good things that are working out.
I love that because you point out something that I think a lot of people don't really realize. You were showing up, you suited up, you showed up, you did what you did, and you made such a difference in someone else's life. You had no idea.
No, we don't.
But here they are, and they had the opportunity to come up to you and say something, but not everybody does have that opportunity. So I'm really glad you pointed that out. So people realize that it does make a difference when you share your knowledge and you're helping and being of service.
Well, if we can help somebody every day, that's positive. I mean, it might sound a little hubris, and I'm doing it for my own best good, but and that's true. I am, because if I'm
Mhm.
helping somebody, it helps me. It helps put the smile on my face, and giving is actually a gift to myself. And a lot of people don't understand that. But by giving something away, I'm actually giving something to myself. Is the graciousness of the act, and
Mm.
hopefully that person will accept it and take it and move forward with it.
You know, I think it's a really good point because I don't know. I think a lot of us think we're not enough as is. And it's just as simple. It could be as simple as literally smiling at somebody, because I've had when I've been down in the dumps and somebody just randomly smiles at me, it makes my day. I just automatically like, oh, thank you. So, yeah, I really like that. It's kind of just not that, I don't know, it's something for you too, like you said.
Absolutely. The universe has wonderful gifts for us, but we're
Mhm.
not going to get them unless one, we ask for them, because
True.
not asking is a self-fulfilling prophecy right there. And two, we're not going to get them unless we accept things. Because I'm
Hmm.
sure you know people who are offered things that, oh no, I don't need that. No, I'm going to do it myself. No, 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 no. And I've discovered, because I was that person at one time, that when you do that, you're telling the universe you don't want anything. And guess what the universe is going to give you?
Big
Exactly
fat.
what you're asking for. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
and
You
also I discovered that it's almost disrespectful to the person. This person is trying to give me something, and I'm telling them no. No, take it, make them feel good, because they're doing something great.
Exactly. I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's what I was about to say was it's even if somebody gives you a compliment and they're like, "Oh no." Can't
Yeah.
you just let me say whatever? I mean, it's for me as much as it is for you. I'm so glad you mentioned that. We are running low on time. So, one of the questions that I love to ask my audience, or not my audience, ask my guest is there something you wish I would have asked you? And what I mean by that is there something that maybe you didn't get to share that you would love to share?
Let me think about that. I've sort of semi-shared everything. The one basic thing is I'm going to share, and I think I've touched on a little, is we're all here for a reason. If
Hmm.
we're above ground, we're here for a reason. And we might not know what it is, but in my opinion, one is to learn something, and two is to teach someone something. And there's someone out there just waiting for you to bump into them so they can ask you that question that you have the answer to. So take advantage of it and find that person and give them that answer.
I love that. I want to pop up your books again because you have a couple of beautiful um, gifts for the world. And how can people buy these?
Well, you can find them on Amazon. They're on Amazon. Yeah, so it's just Commanding Your Future and Family Urban Disaster Planning by Daniel Kilburn. You should go right to it.
I love that. Are you planning on writing more or what's going on with that? What's your future look
I've
like?
got I've got I've got 8 number one bestsellers that I co-authored already. I'm working
Hmm.
on 2 more series of 3 books each. Putting my first chapters in this month. And then I've got another one I'm self-publishing, and I call that Just in Case of Death. Now,
Hmm.
you mentioned that your mother left and she had no will and she didn't have anything. Well, that's what this book covers. And I learned this from my time in the Veterans Administration, where I talked to a survivor who was destitute because they didn't know where the money was. They didn't know where the insurance policy was. They were getting foreclosed on their house. So this book I'm writing covers all those bases. The way you will have it for your survivors, so they won't have to go through the probate courts and all that kind of stuff when they pass.
Yeah, that can be a little bit of a hassle, especially when you're struggling with grief. Everything is so much, even eating, breathing feels hard. So I love that. In case of death, I think that's such. I remember when you and I were speaking before and you mentioned that title, I just thought that was such a humorous title. It doesn't have to be so heavy. And as somebody who has been through that, it is so much nicer when you don't have to when you have those uncomfortable conversations, because now you know what what's going on and you don't have to worry about it in the moment.
Well, that's my three P's. Have a plan, be playful, and persevere. And the playful part is what keeps us really going. When we get dragged down or like, ooh, have fun. Somehow
Exactly.
have fun because I guarantee the person next to you would rather see you smiling than frowning anyway, right?
Exactly. I love that. And on that note, that is all the time that we have. So, Daniel, thank you so much for being here today. I just absolutely adore you. I'm glad we could make this happen.
Well, it's my pleasure, Julianne, and I look forward to seeing what we can do in the future.
Me too. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for being here today. We will be back again next Thursday. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week.